Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Kopitiam Council, the second episode for this week. We covered quite a doozy of an issue, Haffiz, with the lack of noise from the Prime Minister on the appointment of an incoming Chief Justice for an upcoming retirements of 9 out of the 14 federal court judges. And I believe I hinted Sabah towards the end of why. Sabah is also could be in the firing line of the implications of the decision that's going to be made. So I think in that respect, we're going to zoom back towards Sabah because Fiz, issue after issue in Sabah has been propping up ever since last year, and now things have come to a head. We've seen all kinds of scandals, allegations, and then now recently with a bombshell of a situation with a alleged corruption scandal regarding mining licenses here, brought forward by Selangor businessman Dr. Albert Tay, who is now the court, saying that well, he was charged for graft, but also accusing several leaders, local leaders, for also participating in a very odd situation where the accused, where the person that's calling it out, the whistleblower, is also the accused here, also accused of participating in the scandal, right? So very odd situation. You have a whistleblower, but at the same time, somewhat of a villain figure here. There's a lot of weird. I mean, only I think one of the situations where we think, well, these are one of the things that can happen in Malaysia and in Sabah. So, where can we go from here, Hafiz? This is quite a huge thing to unpack.
Yeah, there's a lot of episodes since the leak or published, actually not the leak, because so many videos, and it was this expose was done by one of the digital news outlet Malaysia Kini, and you can just refer all these videos of conversation between the accused Dato' Elbate and so many Sabahans politicians. Now here's the thing, Adi, like we're not gonna discuss the details of this because the court hearing is still ongoing. The accusations, just the update the other day that Albert Tay was looks very charged, and come out and says like he dare anyone's that can go against him, because he looks very confident and fully prepared, even though he knows what's coming for him, because like you mentioned, he is also being accused of giving the giving the bribe, as much as he is a whistleblower. So what is he gaining from this? I don't know. That's another question for maybe another episode. But I would like to see from Sabah, because it's very unfortunate to say that Sabah is not very strange in this kind of issue. In fact, when this was first exposed months ago, the reaction from Sabahans was not a surprise at all. In fact, yeah, inilah ni zaman mo election sudah, all this kind of news is come up now, all that. So what a sad situation of reactions of people of Sabah to this. Like, we know this is gonna happen. This is always happening in the past, in the present, and why not in the future? So the skepticism from Sabahans here it speaks volumes, especially the scales that I don't know, more than 10 Sabahans politicians involved, at least in the videos. There could be more that the unreleased video or whatever. So I first of all, I would like to see Sabah from different perspective here, because in Kopitiam Council we always talk about international affairs as well. So let's zoom out a little bit, Adi, because in other countries how they deal with corruptions could be quite different, especially in, let's say, in the UK or in Germany, where we're going to talk about US, of course, a bit later. But in the US and UK, political funding is quite similarly in US, lobbying, you may call it, is legal, but there's a but here, because everything has to go through the audit system. So there's a limit to how much a company, an entity can donate to a particular assemblyman or MPs, so called. Then there will be a lot of check and balance when involving some kind of donations. What is considered as bribery? Those must be clearly defined in that. But in Malaysia or in Sabah, we do not have a clear definition. What is corruption? Is it a corruption if you are dancing in front of a TikTok and then you use that money from endorsement from a company and then to actually support your own political party or your own political career, and then give this money to your so-called potential voters? So where is the line here? So I think this is also another incident of how we could strengthen our institution by learning from other states or countries. Let's start with that first, Adi.
Definitely. I think you hit the nail on the head when it comes to political financing, something that has been fought for a very, very long time by a lot of activists, a lot of experts, a lot of champions for democracy and friends of democracy. And this was something that was championed heavily by Prime Minister himself when he was on the campaign trail. And so far, I haven't seen anything really materialize out of that aspiration, right? Like usual, reforms come and go when only come out of the mouth when it is convenient as rhetoric, right? So this is very important to point out. Like this puts a cap on money being used for elections, so that a disproportionate amount isn't being used so that one can get ahead of the other when it comes to distributing resources and funds. And I'm going to try bring this into a wider conversation here, is because this whole scandal isn't a one-off result or just a few bad apples going rogue here and there. It's part of a very, very deep system that has been embedded in our whole political culture and our whole social culture here. Like we're seeing with this whole scandal here, these alleged allegations of corruption, and if corruption is proven here, right? Regardless, corruption is corruption. You take money that shouldn't be used, right? Public funds, and using it for patronage, that is wrong, completely wrong. But this is the logical outcome of a patronage-driven political culture, where the lines between the public service and private enrichment is blurred here, because you said what constitutes corruption. Is there a clear definition? And because a system such as this, licenses, tenders, political positions are just currency. They're part of the same currency which can be traded, negotiated, bartered behind closed doors, the elites deciding what game they want to play with all of these currency here, or these benefit or these assets here. So, this mining scandal is not a deviation from the norm. Is the norm just made visible here. We know what is going. I think that is why we, a lot of Sabahans, aren't up in arms so much about it, because biasa sudah tu. It is a norm. It's just being rendered visible and rendered conscious for everyone to see. And we talked a little about this last week when we talked about the protest that the students, Yuswara Mahasiswa, made. That that is part of the situation. The problem here is that they see what happened to all these public funds? Why isn't it being used to channel into important things such as resolving the water issue or coordinating better with the water department, right? So that is the result of not having a political financing act. You're not presenting a foundation so that there's transparency where when it comes to how funds are being used for the elections. There's no independent public appointment commission either. There's no like procurement database to show all these things. It's just part of the same problem. And you don't have these like checks and balances here, right? So this is important because it is something to do. It comes down with a very important word we like to throw out, which is accountability, right? We talk about democracy, right? What we call democracy is just elections without accountability. Let's be honest here. And when power like that is unchecked, it naturally gravitates towards patronage. Patronage always finds a way to insert itself back into a system so that they can have all these rent seekers push their position even further. This is a tale as old as time. You can see in historical cases where like a patrimonial elite tries to reinsert itself into governance, and then they give out patronage to ensure that their networks and their power is consolidated. This is a classic story of humanity here, because that's the easiest way to control people. And when you control people, you can give out all these things. You consolidate it as loyalty. You give it out. And Sabah, I tell you, has been historically under institutionalized since even the time of the British Crown, the British North Borneo Trading Company, the North Borneo Trading Company. Institutions were never set up to make this transition that we have. The Crown Colony never did that, and then certainly when we formed Malaysia, right, the quest for institutionalizing that has been kept to the wayside.
Adi, I don't know. I just want to zoom out a little bit also to our region, ASEAN here, because in this part of the world, corruption seems to be a very it's more it's a something that we can't really get rid of for some weird reasons. Like we successfully, have a economic growth in the 70s, 80s, at least for some countries. But apart from Singapore, I can't really say for certainty that we could get. I mean, 100% is almost impossible, right? But at least 90 or 80% of corruptions for these countries, because Indonesia is the same, Thailand, Malaysia, Philippines, but maybe perhaps also, again, I'm thinking out loud here. I think it has something to do with our how intertwined religion and our culture. Hear me out. Because religious body or religious institution, right? Like churches or mosques or temples, they have a almost zero tax given on them. So it's a perfect conduit for money laundering, or just channeling money through there, and it's gonna be as good as new the next day. So that's why almost in every country in Southeast Asia, a political, religious based political party, they may not be the government of the day or the sole dominant party, but they're always there. They're always there in the corner of your eye. It's not gone, but it's not also in the limelight, but it's always there. You could say that to pass in Malaysia, you could say that in Thailand, you could say that in Indonesia as well. So perhaps a move to a more secular, in the true sense of being secular, a secular country, is much needed reform here. I mean, we can debate all day, like in what form of secularism is suited for Malaysia, Indonesia, or Thailand or Philippines, but we must agree that where we draw the line of, where, because we need to start drawing the line, like you mentioned, like how do we even define corruptions here? Is my contribution or donation to a particular mosque or temple or churches in my area constitute as corruptions? So as simple as that, if we can't answer straight away, that pose bigger questions, like like you mentioned in the let's take for example Syed Saddiq case here, because people draw some comparisons here, because he accept all this endorsement, sponsorship money, right, for his parliamentary works. So in a way, yes, you get that money through an actual work, actually doing something, or work or promotion or whatever. Yeah, that's fair. But if you get elected as an MP, and then let's say there will be a time where that MP is involved in I don't know, awarding some kind of projects or contracts to, let's say, make certain things, and that particular company that sponsored him happen to be in some same industry and get awarded for that contract, would that be a case of corruption? I scratch your back, you scratch mine kind of case? Maybe. We don't know. See, that's why I think the institutions need to be strengthened and reformed and ongoing, always happening audit here, because the money trail is there, and the system is only as good as the weakest link, and this we have tons or not or a lot of weakest link in this country. But going back to Sabah, Adi, it's a very apparent that our politicians are still in the state of, I wouldn't say denial, but that I think they still have the mindset of, I will get away with it. So there's some so-called, they know that they have protection, and I think they also know that the most of the voters wouldn't care about it. So I think this is where the individualism, I think, is very important. Where in individualism, someone's economic standing is very important in deciding whether their politicians or their leaders is someone they look up to. And like you mentioned, like a political patronage is kind of rampant in Sabah, and due to because of one of the poorest state in Sabah. There's nothing hiding it. So it goes back to that, and only being improve in terms of our economic standing would somehow alleviate all this corruptions here and there, smallest kind of form of corruptions, as the biggest of like a waterworks scandal that we have few years ago. So not just politicians, but also here civil servants that are supposed to work for the public, protect the public's interests, but turn out they are the biggest crooks.
Yeah, and I think you struck a very hard point there, Hafiz, when you talk about how religious institutions also have cultivated this kind of practice here. And I don't think it's also just exclusive to us in the region. This was very much rampant in the Ottoman Empire. Like Waqf is, it's basically endowment, right? Endowment, and if you're rich, you give money to or Waqfs, and then you for social causes, like you give to charities and you get and then these things don't get taxed, right? These things are not taxed, and for some reason all these endowments are run by somehow people that are your own family or allies in the institutions, right? So it's a very common situation when it comes to patrimonialism all across different kinds of contexts. And thankfully, I think a lot of countries have moved out of that. They've grown out of that. Of course, it still happens in some degree or another. But in Sabah, we've never grown out of that because, like you said, we never had the institutions to strengthen and to tell us that these are not good practices. We do not have this literacy on clientelism or patronage to say no. Everyone just accepts it as it is. We're socialized into thinking that the politician gives me money, so that's how's that a bad thing, right? Because that money can be used to put food on my plate. Well, all these little favors here and there, right? We're never taught into thinking that is a wrong thing, right? We've conditioned to expect patronage. Actually, we're expected to think of to expect patronage, not policy. Like, we expected individualized benefits, right, rather than institutional improvements. You vote, like a lot of voting patterns is you don't vote for someone with a clear vision, right? You vote for someone who will fix your roads, give you a contract, sponsor your event. And people aren't, I wouldn't say people, because a lot of people would straight away say that we're stupid, right? We're stupid for believing this, but it's not also because we're stupid. I don't think we're stupid. It's that the system is part of, back to the issue of the system, that the system teaches them and us that this is how things work. When policy doesn't touch your life, it really does, like, to a lot of people, what they care about policy, right? But patronage does. Patronage really affects a lot of what you can do with your life, right? And naturally you chose the latter, right? And this is a very vicious cycle where politicians don't need to build institutions because people don't demand them. Like, when we say Hafiz, I think we're a cadre of a very small minority here that calls for better practices, right? But I think most people would say that, well, my life is a bit better because of all these favors that's been granted by politicians. So we're very structurally vulnerable, not like the other countries that went through that kind of experience, right? Of endowments, patronage, clientelism, patrimonialism. So we never improved our climate to weather all these issues here, right? And we never had it. I don't think we've ever had it. And you can see there's an issue inherited from, like I said, from the era of the time of the British. Sabah was not North Borneo, and Sabah was never set up to be governed like a state, right? It was set up to extract resources. It's an extractive economy, right? It's an extractive political arrangement that we've had, and we've fooled ourselves into thinking that whichever leadership comes, right, they are already taking on a fully realized governance system, a fully realized bureaucracy, but it's not. We've never developed governance or the governance system to be able to be modern, to, not, I would say modern because I don't want to have that negative, but I'm trying to say is that we never built institutions where it promotes good governance, good practices, so that it is properly represented. No, we come to this assumption that government is already, like, the system of governance is already set up, ready to go, just vote in who we want, plug and play kind of situation, but we have a lot of missing parts here, a lot of missing ingredients that is very much vital to a healthy democracy.
I mean, it's a far cry from this. There's a case of a corruption case in Singapore, when one of the bribe was given to the minister, the senior minister, was the concert tickets. It's a far cry from the millions of ringgits or dollars that some politicians in Malaysia got. So it's and that minister actually got red-handed, and politicians in Malaysia just walk away like business as usual. Like, what happened? Oh, I got another additional 1 million in my bank account. Sweet. But I think it's true, Adi, because you mentioned, like, it's not just particularly in this region. When I talk about how religious institutions actually have influence in this, because Adi, it reminded me of interview with Ted Cruz, Senator Ted Cruz, with Tucker Carlson when he defended IPAC, when Tucker Carlson bombarded him with the why IPAC is not registered under as a lobbyist and as a foreign lobbyist. And one of the things he said that he has a obligations to protect Judeo-Christian value here, and by that meaning, to believe in whatever that is supposed to be Israel is the promised land, so-called. I'm paraphrasing here, but that's along the lines of what he said. And then, the beauty of a lobbying system in America is that you can check how much these senators get from being lobbying or whatever, how much they get from all this foreign company or whatever that donating to their political cause. And guess what? IPAC is one of the highest Ted Cruz donors. So it's it's not rocket science to put two and two together that, of course, Ted Cruz here being paid to defend IPAC in America, and whatever that Judeo-Christian or Israel is try to put forward in America. Now, coming back to this region, I think it's similarly. It's just, in America it's more advanced. Everything is documentations, but of course there's always loopholes. In Malaysia, particularly, we are still way, way behind. We can't even being very robust with our political funding act. It's in the talks. It's goes through our parliament. I don't know what is the status right now, because this is, nothing seems to be. Yes, one of the earliest that are being done is that to declare some assets, but even declaring assets here seems to have a lot of a loophole, because I can just not declare certain cars or houses that I own simply because I put maybe under my wife's name, maybe under my other family member's name. So the loophole is there to be taken advantage of. And oh boy, that we have a long way. Not, I talk as general in Malaysian, but in Sabah it's even worse. Have you ever heard Sabahan politicians declare their assets, Adi? There you go.
Right to see. But I mean, really, it is a case of we don't have any watchdogs, we don't have any guardians ensuring that these practices are really upheld, truly upheld, right? So I think for the foreseeable future, this is just one chapter of a very long running saga until someone actually has the guts to push for reform. What kind of reform do I see that happening? Well, the Political Financing Act, Funding Act. That's already drafted. That's already brought to us to the Parliament and the Prime Minister's review by the activists, the experts, and all that. Execute on that vision there. We need more laws on transparency. We need, even maybe procurement reform. Like I think, so that we know like these projects, right? Because
Yeah.
projects, civil projects and businessmen and all these shadowy things. This is where it thrives, right? So that means that that's a nest of issues there. You have to find a way to tackle that, right? But of course, there's going to be this argument that, oh well, if you do that, you lose support here and there. You lose support from the business people. But so that means is a rot in that encompasses a lot of parts of society here, right? From politicians to the business people to the even us as regular citizens who has tolerated this as an issue, who sometimes even expect this to be the norm, right? So it comes out, and I don't like. Of course, I said, well, the Political Financing Act helps put a cap on it, right? And helps slowly transition. But that means we still need to reform our culture as well, to have a course correction to say that this is not the right way to govern, a democracy here, right? This is not the best way. So maybe this is me being idealistic about it, but that is just how, if we want to be that kind of country, right, to be that kind of state, this is what needs to be done here, right? We cannot always use the whole excuse of we have to be pragmatic, we have to be realistic here because people like this. No. Yeah, that could be the case, but is it wrong to expect better, right? Is it wrong to expect more from our government? Doesn't matter which party, right? I'm not naming whichever government. I'm just saying whoever comes into government, is it wrong to expect more of them, be better of them, because they represent us? They're supposed to represent the best of us, right? So, okay, maybe easier for me to say because I'm not in politics, right? But regardless, it doesn't. It's a matter of principle. It's a matter of conviction, right? If Prime Minister was so full of that conviction, then I hope he's willing to exactly show it with the cases that we mentioned, all of this political financing, procurement, appointment of a fair, unbiased chief justice and federal court judges, right? All that matters, right? So it's these little steps I feel sets the tone, sets the standard, and when it comes to our whole political culture, if we settle for less, then that is what we deserve.
I think for last word, I think I just want to encourage our viewers. If you watch Kopitiam Council for the first time, we actually made a 8-episode series of Voices to Action, and 2 of the episodes we talk about corruption at length. So these are with professionals, former professionals in Sabah, and we talk about corruption, rampant corruption in Sabah, and actually some of the very tangible solutions that can be done. But of course, like Adi said, it seems that when it comes to politicians to actually pull the trigger, it seems to be not very efficient. So the political will is much needed, and I would like to invite all of you to watch the video and to get some of these to hear some of the solutions by these professionals that that know the industry like the back of their hand. Last word from you, Adi.
Well, Rousseau talked. Rousseau and all the universalist humanist thinkers always made this assumption that men are, humanity is born right, peaceful, good, and all that, and society is what corrupts them, right? Maybe that's a reflection on how we as a people have come to be, is that we have let society and the expectation of society not just have leaders who have compromised moral character, but I think it also has compromised our moral collective character as well, moral culture as well. So perhaps we need to reevaluate the symptoms in society that we have that are enabling these things, like the corruption of our own moral fiber as well. A lot of things you can point that to. People can point it to capitalism, consumerism, propaganda, or whatever, brainwashing, whatever that. But I think a serious hard look needs to be looked into. What kind of messages are we actually spreading to our people here? Are these things are normal? Are these things even right? And if that's what general public deems it to be true, because I think truth, even though truth is intangible and objective, sometimes truth can be accepted, can be said, and lies can be said to enough to a point that it becomes the work of truth. So we need to have a big, hard look at who we are as well. We cannot always blame our leaders or political leaders as well, because they also have operated in the system that has transcended just beyond them, has went way beyond them, and is something that we all are part of.
And our leaders is reflections of the society. So if you want to blame our politicians, blame ourselves first. So that's it. The end for this very lengthy episode, like 30 minutes. Wow. So if you would like to see us in a different format, a shorter format, you can go to our Instagram and TikTok. They will be shorter there. And like always, thank you for watching. See you guys in the next week.